This is an example of the type of terrain that we're going to learn how to build with these tutorials. We're going to go over rust effects, the texture of rust, the weld lines, and then watermarks. This is the piece we're going to build in the tutorial today, and specifically we're going to go over rust texture in this tutorial. You're going to want to start with a cardboard tube, and in this case I've glued a plastic bowl from the dollar store on top. Now the cardboard tube will need to be treated. As you can see, it has gaps in it, and it'll be quite rough, and it won't look very good next to the plastic. So what I did was I taped the plastic bowl off, and what you're going to do is put a slight layer of primer. As you can see, it's kind of furry and it's kind of fuzzy, and it won't look good next to the plastic. So the next step we're going to do is get some 4/0 steel wool. And what we're going to do is essentially sand the piece and make the surface smooth. Since there was a plastic bowl on the top of this, I wanted the textures to match. So I went ahead and applied 2 layers of primer and sanded it twice, and as you can see, it gets quite smooth. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and apply that texture that makes it look scaled and weathered and rusty. So as you can see, there's one spot where I did a test. But what you're going to use is a product called plastic wood. It's important to find this specific product or an acetone based wood filler. The Elmer's wood filler is water based, and I've found it does not work as well. And since this is acetone based, I would advise you go outside or in the garage to apply it. For this video I applied it at my workbench, and the fumes were quite strong, and I don't recommend doing this inside. The technique you're going to use is you want to have it go on as rough as possible. You don't want a smooth finish except where you're filling in damage to the cardboard portion, or you're filling in the part of the cardboard tube that formed the spiral. So when you apply it, use light pressure, and you want the popsicle stick to be almost perpendicular to the surface, and it will create a very rough texture. Then you're going to go ahead and let this dry overnight. One note that you can see on here is that the surface of the bowl has been warped and distorted, and that was accomplished with a heat gun. And again, definitely do that outside and be quite careful. And essentially I just applied heat until I saw the surface start to warp and bow, and then I used the round portion of a screwdriver handle to help induce some of the dents and warping. You can see what I did here is I marked on the side where I don't need to add rust lines or rust effects, because the finished piece will be half buried in the earth, and so there's no need to do any more work. So as you can see where I marked it off, I will not be applying the wood filler. This is an example of what you're going to want your piece to look like when you're done. You can see it's very rough, and don't worry about the peaks right now. The next step after this is you're going to sand this down, and so it'll look much more like a rusty surface, and the effect will be quite nice. Before you sand it, you definitely want to wait 24 hours and let this dry. And the good thing about the plastic wood is it seems to stick exceptionally well to plastic, even a smooth plastic like what I used here. Here we're going to go ahead and sand down the wood filler that we've applied. It's been 24 hours, and you have a couple options. My favorite choice is this here. It's a rubber block. It's quite solid. You use standard sandpaper, and it has a couple of spikes, as you can see, that hold the sandpaper on there. Your other option is to use the foam sanding blocks, but I've found that those don't work as well, and the wood filler, especially the more jagged peaks, tend to tear up the foam blocks. But if that's all you got, you just might end up using a couple more of them than if you had the rubber sanding block. So the next tutorial will be weld lines. As you can see in the pictures, this is going to be somewhat of a ramshackle, kind of an unorganized type piece, and so the panels have been welded on in an irregular fashion, and the next tutorial will cover those weld lines. And then we'll go ahead and move on to painting and how we're going to make the weld lines and the textured surface really pop with washes and the paint job. Then we'll be moving on to chipped paint. As you can see here on the stencil, I ended up chipping a total of 3 layers, and I think it turned out exceptionally well. In addition to the chip paint, we're going to do the water effects. If you look under the stairs, you'll see some nice water effects that have happened there, and they are very easy to do. Then the final tutorial for this piece I think that we're going to do is the wooden nails and planking. This was a little bit tricky to figure out, but I think the end result pretty much speaks for itself. You'll be able to install these little wooden nails into your planks to make it look like they were smashed together, and it has a real nice look to it. So subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the future tutorials here. Thanks for watching.